Since the 15th of April 2023, Sudan has been in the grip of a civil war. Chad opened its doors to 600,000 Sudanese refugees in the eastern provinces of the country in the Adre area. Since June of the same year, the Apostolic Vicariate and Caritas Mongo have been present in the refugee camps in the provinces of Sila and Ouaddaï. Ouaddaï is currently the Chadian province with the highest concentration of refugees. Teams have started working in the refugee camps of Foshana and Metche. In the Sahel, the question of water is central. Here, the dry season extends for 8 months, from October to May. During this period, surface water gradually dries up. Thus, the difficulty of access to water, coupled with the arrival of displaced populations, has made it necessary to drill boreholes to draw water from deep underground aquifers. Drilled wells, cisterns for storing drinking water, and pumps were constructed to meet the water needs of the populations. Caritas teams in Mongo were also able to repair some structures already present in the area, but which had been out of use for some time. Access to water remains complicated, especially due to the fact that the Chadian authorities had placed some refugees in a previously uninhabited site with no adequate equipment. In response to the emergency situation, food kits, including bags of rice, sorghum, millet or flour, were distributed by the large UN humanitarian organizations deployed on the ground. The Metche camp has become a strategic area where Sudanese refugee communities and the indigenous Ouaddaï population coexist, both being of the Masalit ethnic group. Gradually, food markets have sprung up all along the camp. A real commercial circuit of selling and reselling has been created. In fact, it is known that 10 to 20% of the food provided through aid is resold by the refugees in favor of buying missing basic necessities such as medicines, tomatoes, mosquito nets, soaps, and other items. The situation in the Sudanese refugee camps is harsh, and living conditions can be very difficult. Here, we choose to show only the hope, reconstruction, and resilience that we have been able to observe. We want to emphasize the strength and resilience of the Sudanese refugee women and the indigenous people of the Masalit ethnic group from Darfur in Sudan and the eastern Chadian provinces. Despite humanitarian intervention and the supply of basic foodstuffs, this assistance unfortunately always falls short of the real needs of the populations, meaning that food security is threatened and cohabitation between refugees and villagers remains precarious. In January 2024, early in the morning and somewhat by chance, Caritas workers noticed many refugee women heading towards the valley floor areas, armed with traditional hoes. They decided to follow them and investigate what they were going to do. The areas close to the wadi and the stream that runs through the valley are made up of good soil, the result of rain erosion, which accumulates in the valley. These areas are also gathering places for the many herds and flocks that come to water at the traditional wells dug in the stream bed. In Chad, rivers are formed there with the arrival of the rainy season and, in general, hold water for 3 to 4 months. To find out more about what was happening on the valley floor, Caritas sent animators to find out why they were moving. And it was there that we realized that several women had already organized themselves with makeshift means to create gardens and produce vegetables. Talking with them, we realized that the aim was to improve and vary their diet and also to generate economic income and be able to buy those products not supplied by humanitarian aid. The resourcefulness of these women on the one hand amazed us, and on the other led us to reflect on how to support this effort. In order to gain access to land owned by the local population, Sudanese refugee women had to associate with other indigenous women in order to farm together. They then worked together in small groups of 10 to 15 people so that they could bargain better with the owners of the land. The size of community gardens is about 1/4 of a hectare for each group. Very often, 2 groups join together in one plot in order to make better use of traditional wells and fences. In this way, they occupy about 1/2 a hectare. We met with some of the women and tried to respond to their needs by improving their equipment with motor pumps for irrigation or agricultural materials for cultivation, such as wire mesh fences, watering cans, or hose, so that they can become truly autonomous and more productive. It did not take long before positive results started to appear. In order to share the land, agreements were negotiated with the owners of the land, thanks to the intervention of Caritas animators, who acted as facilitators to discuss and negotiate contracts on behalf of the women's groups for reasonable conditions, depending also on the planned investments. Here's how it works. The landowner gives up part of his land free of charge for 4 years, in exchange for improved equipment and rational use of his land. For example, the owners can plant trees that the women's groups will water later. It is important to remember that for now, we intervene with women's groups that have already started farming activities. In fact, we think it is important to support the initiatives of these enterprising women to ensure better success and to set an example to others. Motor pumps improve irrigation techniques. Here we can see women opening the water path through channels they have built to direct the water to their plots. This makes the irrigation of all the land planted with vegetables more efficient, reduces labour, and saves time for other activities. We support the women with agricultural materials, such as hoes, shovels, picks, and in particular for the installation of protective metal fences, and the supply and maintenance of motor pumps. Water use is thus optimised and all the garden plots are irrigated. In addition to the material for irrigating the vegetable gardens, we also support the women by providing various services. As seen before in the valley bottom lands, animals are everywhere, so we provide material to build fences to protect crops from animals. In addition, we distribute seeds for plants which are adapted to the local climate and their eating habits, as well as the material needed to build plant nurseries. Thanks to all these actions, the women no longer need to resell part of their food aid, as they are able to generate enough money to meet their needs and those of their families. The advantage is also that the women take care of the children, and the benefits therefore go directly to the family and family management. As we mentioned earlier, the water resource and improved access conditions are crucial. Finally, thanks to the women, we learned that emergency food aid is not a long-term solution. It certainly allows food and non-food items to be provided in the emergency phase. However, its impact is limited in time. Some essential products for women are not delivered. Resale circuits are organised, and emergency humanitarian aid cannot remain indefinitely. Refugee and Indigenous women have the right to emancipate themselves from food aid and become self-reliant and resilient. This is why we act, so that they can sustainably invest in their land. In Africa, women account for 60% of the agricultural labour force, but have less access than men to resources such as land and credit, and to tools and services that increase productivity. In this situation in the refugee camps, it is important for us to highlight their key role as producers and providers of food, and their vital contribution to the food security of their families. In this way, we hope that, through our actions, we can contribute to giving women real hope for their future.